can have a wedding anytime, Addie. This is my first baby." Those words landed like a thrown stone 6 weeks before I was supposed to walk down an aisle lined with empty chairs. My sister said it like she was choosing a brunch spot, not cancelling my day. She booked her baby shower for the same date and hour. One by one, my family followed her. My mother, my aunts, my cousins, even my father, the man who promised he would walk me down the aisle. He chose finger sandwiches at a country club over his daughter's vows. My name is Adeline Farrow. I'm 28. If you think this sounds like a headline, wait until you hear the rest. In the Farrow household, everything revolved around Colette. She married Brett Whitfield, who bought loyalty with a Lexus, a Cartier bracelet, and a mortgage payment. Brett's money rewired our family's priorities. Colette stopped working. She became a socialite and an event planner in name only. My parents accepted the lifestyle Brett paid for, and with it came a quiet rule: do not upset the golden child. I'm the younger sister who paints for a living. Children's books, editorial illustrations, a rented studio with paint-stained counters and a second-hand couch. I met Marcus Delaney at an art fair. He paints like he breathes, real, stubborn, and brilliant. We ate a lot of pasta some months, but we were building something honest. When Marcus proposed that January, no ring at first, just a question whispered on the studio floor, I called my parents. My father's first response to the wedding date was not joy but logistics. Let me check. He promised to walk me down the aisle. I held that promise like glass. 3 weeks before the wedding, Aunt Patricia asked if I'd be attending Colette's shower. I hadn't received an invitation. When I called Colette, she sounded rehearsed. The venue was non-refundable, the caterer couldn't move. 2 weeks earlier she'd sent shower invites. 2 weeks before I mailed my save the dates. She knew. She chose anyway. I didn't beg. I asked once. Their silence answered. The RSVP list started to look like a map of who I really was to them. The RSVPs were a map of where I stood in my own family. Out of 38 relatives invited, 22 had already said no, each one coincidentally heading to Greenwich for Colette's shower. I didn't beg. I asked once, clearly. Their silence answered for them. Rachel, my best friend and an ER nurse who refuses to tolerate nonsense, sat me down and showed me the receipts, screenshots of private calls, messages coaxing each relative to choose Colette. Adeline will understand, Colette texted our father. She's used to being disappointed. The words landed like a verdict. Worse than the absence was the choreography, how carefully everyone had been pulled away. On the morning of June 14th, I tried to steady myself. The dress hung in the closet, vintage lace, altered by a seamstress who swore I looked like Grace Kelly. My bouquet waited in a mason jar. At 7 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Dad. I answered, voice steady. Adeline, honey, he said, and the sound of his voice had been sanded down to nothing. Colette's shower starts at noon. With the drive, I don't think we can make it by 3. 8 seconds of silence. 8 seconds that erased 30 years of Father's Day cards and bedtime stories. I told him, calmly, that this was my only wedding day. He apologized in a way that sounded rehearsed and then offered the same hollow consolation he always did. There would be other moments. There wouldn't be. I arrived at the garden at 2:15. 42 chairs, white linen, sprigs of lavender tied to each back, beautiful from a distance, empty up close. 7 people filled the rows. Marcus, Rachel, 2 art school friends, Harold Brenton in a suit I'd never seen him wear, and 2 college friends who'd driven up from New York. 7 in 42 chairs. The wind moved through the empty rows like a living thing. I stood at the end of the aisle, heart pounding, about to walk alone. Then footsteps, steady, deliberate, approached from behind. Harold Brenton, our landlord, offered his arm. "If you'll let an old man have the honor," he said. He had been watching. He had shown up. We walked. The ceremony lasted 12 minutes. We said our vows, laughed, cried. 7 people clapped. It was imperfect and it was enough. After the reception, silence from my family cut deeper than the empty chairs. But Harold's presence wasn't the only surprise. He'd been quietly building something that would change everything. The silence from my family after the wedding was louder than the empty chairs. No calls. No messages. Just the same curated Instagram feed where Colette posed with pink balloons while I held a bouquet of lavender in a mason jar. I stopped waiting for apologies and turned my attention to the only thing that had never let me down, my work and Marcus's. Marcus began a new series he called The Seventh Chair, large oils about absence, a dinner table with one chair pulled back, a church pew with a folded program, a row of white linen chairs in a garden. He didn't need to explain. I knew what the paintings meant. They were our grief and our stubbornness painted into light and shadow. 2 weeks after the wedding, Harold Brenton knocked on our studio door with an invitation that felt like a plot twist. He'd set out 3 mugs and a cardboard box on his kitchen table. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago," he said, and opened the box. Inside were exhibition catalogues, clipped reviews, photographs of Harold standing beside artists at openings, evidence of a life I'd never suspected. Harold had run Brenton Gallery in Chelsea for 22 years. He'd represented 43 artists. Several were now in museum collections. He'd been watching Marcus quietly, the way a curator watches a single brushstroke that promises a whole painting. 6 months earlier, Harold had sent photographs of Marcus's work to a private collector named Victor Ashland. Victor bought one piece immediately, $85,000. What followed felt unreal. Victor's attorney offered Marcus a commission, 12 original paintings over 18 months, a contract worth $450,000, with a payment schedule, insurance, and legal terms. The Caldwell Gallery on West 25th Street invited Marcus to a solo exhibition centered on the Seventh Chair series. Harold had opened doors we didn't even know existed. When Victor called to thank Marcus for the first paintings, he offered something else. 10 days on his yacht in Monaco, a floating salon where collectors and curators meet. Marcus hesitated because he didn't want money to overshadow our day. I thought of the 42 chairs and the father who chose a baby shower. I thought of how often I'd made myself smaller so others could feel comfortable. Harold's quiet intervention was only the beginning. Silence can be loud. After the reception, my phone stayed stubbornly quiet. No texts, no missed calls, no "so sorry we missed it." Colette's Instagram told the rest of the story. Pink balloons, a dessert table that probably cost more than my entire wedding, and my father smiling beside her, hand on her belly. The caption read, "Surrounded by love. Family is everything." He typed that while I stood at the altar with 7 witnesses and 45 empty chairs. I stopped waiting for apologies. Instead, I focused on what I could control, Marcus's work and my own. He dove into a new series, The Seventh Chair, paintings about absence and the spaces people leave behind. The canvases were raw and beautiful, and Harold Brenton, our landlord, kept showing up to watch him paint. One afternoon Harold invited us upstairs for coffee and opened a box that changed everything. Harold had a past I never suspected. He'd run Brenton Gallery in Chelsea for 22 years. He'd represented artists who now hung in museums. Quietly, months earlier, he'd sent photographs of Marcus's paintings to a private collector named Victor Ashland. Victor bought one piece for $85,000. Then came a formal commission. 12 original paintings over 18 months, a contract worth $450,000. Caldwell Gallery on West 25th Street offered Marcus a solo show centered on the Seventh Chair series. Harold had been building a bridge while we painted in the studio, unaware of the world waiting on the other side. When Victor called to thank Marcus, he offered something else, an invitation to his yacht in Monaco, a floating salon where collectors and curators meet. Marcus hesitated because he didn't want money to overshadow our life. I thought of the 42 chairs and the father who chose a baby shower. I thought of how often I'd made myself smaller so others could feel comfortable. This time, we accepted. Within days, the contract was signed, the gallery confirmed the exhibition timeline, and our lives shifted. The numbers on the page were dizzying, more than my father earned in 5 years. Harold sat with us at the attorney's office, steady as ever. He'd watched, he'd believed, and he'd acted. Success arrived quietly, but the fallout was anything but. The week after the wedding felt like a slow-motion reveal. My phone stayed silent while Colette's Instagram filled with pink balloons and smiling faces. Her caption read, "Surrounded by love. Family is everything." She typed that while I had just promised my life to Marcus in front of 7 people and 45 empty chairs. The absence was a presence of its own, loud, precise, and impossible to ignore. I stopped waiting for apologies. I muted the family group chat and poured myself into work. Marcus painted. I illustrated. We turned our grief into practice, and practice into craft. He continued the 7th chair series, each canvas a quiet argument against erasure. Harold kept showing up at the studio, coffee in hand, watching the way Marcus pushed light and shadow until a painting became a room you could step into. 2 weeks later, Harold invited us upstairs for coffee and closed the door on the life we thought we knew. He told us he'd run Brenton Gallery in Chelsea for 22 years. He'd represented artists who now hung in museums. Quietly, months earlier, he'd sent Marcus's work to a private collector named Victor Ashland. Victor bought a painting for $85,000 and then commissioned 12 more, an agreement worth $450,000. Caldwell Gallery offered a solo show. Harold had been building a bridge while we painted in the studio, and he finally handed us the keys. The contract meetings, the emails, the gallery timeline, everything felt surreal. We signed on Park Avenue with Harold beside us, steady as a lighthouse. Victor called and offered us 10 days on his yacht in Monaco as a professional courtesy. It was the kind of invitation that opens doors, not closes them. Marcus hesitated because he didn't want money to rewrite the meaning of our life. I thought of the empty chairs and the father who chose a shower over his daughter's vows. We accepted. When the news spread, the family's silence shifted into something else. Curiosity, then awkward messages, then thin apologies. None of it changed the fact that they had chosen. I replied once, "Thank you for your silence," and then I stopped explaining myself. I had learned the hard way that some people will only show up when it benefits them. I would no longer make myself small to make others comfortable. We took the yacht trip. We painted. Marcus's show opened. The 7th chair series sold out. Harold's quiet faith became the scaffolding for a life we hadn't dared to imagine. I learned that family is not only blood. It is the people who show up, who hold space, who build bridges when you cannot. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive and rebuild bridges, or close the door and move on? In the comments, tell me which path you'd choose, and stay tuned for a bonus segment where I share the exact message I sent my family and why I wrote it the way I did.